So the patch notes have arrived, and they are just as disappointing as I thought. In this discussion, I really just wanted to touch on the off balance, primarily because for the most part I played Magicka DK for the longest, and as soon as I read the off balance, I was like, but wait a minute, what about Power Lash? And this is basically what I've said numerous times, that you can't make changes to a game that you just don't understand how it works. And that's primary. People say, oh, the developers, X amount, they're just, they're good people. They do make good changes. And I say all the time that for the most part, the developers don't know what they're doing. They're just kind of fiddling with numbers, from patch to patch to patch. There's no clear direction, that we're going in this direction. This is how we want this class to be. This is how we want these abilities to be. It's just literally just taking every single ability, lining it up and saying it's going to work this way, no matter whether it's a ranged ability or it's whether it's a cast time ability or an insta cast ability, whether it's a melee ability, or if does it stun and do no damage? Okay, it's going to work this way. It's going to cost this much. Is it a dot? It's going to do this much amount. Well, it's going to do this much amount of damage. It's going to cost this much, right? And it's literally to take the game and just literally make it so that every single ability works basically the same way. It just has a different animation. So literally just a reskin, kind of like their cash shop, right? Every mount that comes out is literally just a reskin of another mount or another pet from 2 or 3 patches ago. And so looking at the off balance, they made changes to off balance where it says off balance will now last for 7 seconds from all player sourced abilities as well as sets, right? So think about the CP tree. When you roll dodge, you set enemy, when you dodge someone's ability through the CP tree, you set them off balance, right? And then you can stun them with a heavy attack afterwards and get a stun. This also affects things like the truth set, which procs off of off balance. And of course, when you heavy attack an opponent, you gain more resources. You gain roughly double the amount of resources when you heavy attack an opponent that is off balance. But primarily for Magicka DK, the way that they Power Lash, which is basically their equivalent to like frags, the frag proc, or spectral bow. Basically, this change basically gave Magicka DK a 15-second cooldown on Power Lash. You can imagine frags having a 15-second cooldown, or spectral bow having a 15-second cooldown. The community would be in an uproar, like, this is broken, you can't do this. You're literally breaking a core mechanic for a class just by tweaking the way off balance works. And this should have been something that should have been immediately discussed at the development table, right? Somebody should wait. Does it Magicka proc Power Lash off of off balance? Like, how are they supposed to proc off balance if we're giving it a 15-second cooldown, right? That should have been immediately squashed, right, at the development table. But this is what happens when you just don't understand what you're doing and you're making changes to a game that you just don't understand. And this really comes at the top because at the very least, right, maybe it was proposed by like a lower level developer, right? Or someone at the table. At the very least, the guy who's at the top should have been, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense, right? Because Magicka DK needs the off balance so that they can proc their Power Lash, because that's their main source of healing, right? Their biggest heal that they have access to is via Power Lash, as well as that's where a lot of their burst comes from. So we couldn't make that change. It wouldn't make sense. It would completely ruin the class and literally removing a core mechanic. But it didn't. It actually made it to the PTS. And I wonder how they're going to rework. Are they going to backtrack this now and change the way the off balance work? Because it says right there, it says off balance is no longer reapplied to a target for 15 seconds once the original source of off balance ends. Right, it says this cooldown is displayed as a debuff on targets once they are affected. This is off balance, no longer consumes on targets from heavy attack. So my next question is, because the way it worked before, when you heavy attack somebody who was off balance, you could either opt to heavy attack them, right, and you would gain double the resources as well as stunning the opponent. So if it no longer consumes it, does that mean that you can keep on reapplying heavy attacks and during the 7-second duration for double the amount of resource management. That's something definitely worth testing on the PTS. But the main focus is at least the way that I was looking at it, was that each source of off balance, because that's kind of how it reads when it says once the original source of off balance, because there's numerous ways that you can off balance an opponent. Like I said before, either via the CP tree, where you can roll dodge and attack, it sets the opponent off balance. That's one way, right? Magicka DK can off balance an opponent that is either rooted or stunned, right, with their Flame Lash, and then it will off balance them and then turn into a Power Lash. Previously, you could do it with like a Lightning Staff, where you can off balance an opponent that way. And then when you fear, right, certain fears will set the opponent off balance. So the way that I had read it was that each source of off balance has a 15-second cooldown, right? But it's not the way that it works. It's literally the off balance status effect has a 15-second cooldown, which basically means that Magicka DK now has a 15-second cooldown on Power Lash, literally making the skill absolutely useless. Never mind the costs to all of, maybe that's how they were kind of giving Magicka DK like, well, we were kind of, you know, we reduced your cost because now you don't have to spam your whip as much, right? You can get, now you only get to spam it every 15 seconds, right? Now you don't have to worry about it. We give you cost reduction that way. And I just wonder, how is it that these changes can literally come across the developer table to a development team, right? And at least one of the developers I know plays the game, right? We all know that Gilliam at least played the game in the past. Why didn't that come up as, you know, being in opposition at the development table? It really goes to show you that the people making changes to the game have absolutely no clue what they're doing.